Hi, welcome to Conversations with Nicole at Nefertari's. Today I have a very special guest, my sister friend Marion McGee. Welcome, Marion.
Thank you, Nicole.
We go back to housing,
Affordable housing days.
Florida housing when you were serving over there as communications person, and we worked on the homebuyer showcase at the Civic Center, of all places. And I've seen you in various capacities in real estate, teaching, financial literacy, and homebuyer education, and with the census, and most recently working at a local African American museum.
Yes.
So I want you to come and talk to us a little bit today about the importance of preserving history and why specifically an African American museum or African American history. So tell me a little bit about your thoughts about that.
Oh, wow. Well, it's a great question. I think that the value of our history and our heritage is so important, and it's been downplayed for so long that we are only about 25 years into it being more in vogue, being more socially acceptable to really talk about the importance of African American history and culture, and truly the African diaspora. When we talk about the African diaspora, it expands beyond those of us whose ancestors were brought into North America, but all of people of African descent all over the world, and what value has been added by our presence in every part of the world. And so when we talk about, the value and the importance of African American history, I think it's really understanding who we are and understanding the value of what we bring into any space we occupy. And in order to appreciate that, we have to look back at how we began and what our origins were in terms of our presence in this country. And so it's incredible. I think once we understand who we are in terms of our heritage and what our presence meant to this space, that then we understand better what our possibilities are, and that the limitations cease.
Excellent. I love it. Love that. So nationally, there is the Smithsonian is opening a African American History Museum, which you can tell me what the name of that, the correct name of it is, but that will be opening this fall. So tell me what your thoughts are about that museum opening and what impact you think it will make on the African American population and just the American population in its totality.
Wow. Well, I think that the importance of it, the Smithsonian is opening the first national museum of African American history and culture. And like you said, it will open on the National Mall on September 24th of this year. What is so pivotal about that is that it is really a full circle moment for many of the freedom fighters whose names never were mentioned, whose sacrifice could have easily been forgotten had it not been for the movement that they started. Literally in 1915, we had some of the veterans of World War I who picked up the charge from early African Americans who said there needs to be a memorial to African American soldiers on the National Mall. And from 1915 until 2003, it took that span of time before not only Congress acting, but funding starting to be associated with this act to make sure that not only would a memorial be built, but what evolved into this concept for a full museum. And for persons who may have traveled to Washington, D.C. or New York, to other Smithsonian institutions, there are a number of Smithsonian. There's a National Museum of the American Indian. There's a National Museum of Technology and Science and Technology, National Museum of American History. And this museum really capturing the experience of persons of African descent in the Americas is an incredible tribute.
That's huge.
It's huge. And it will be one of those things that for generations to follow, that all people from all over the world will be able to come and understand and appreciate that value that I talked about, the value of our presence. And when we talk about America as a superpower, as a world power, none of that would be possible if it weren't for the presence of African Americans and the freedom and the fight and the movement that the presence of African Americans brought into this country. So it will capture that spirit and capture that presence, and it's a living history experience. So like all museums, particularly I have a particular bias to African American history museums, locally, regionally, and now nationally. It will capture a spirit, a living spirit that you want to experience over and over and over again.
Excellent. So tell me, who do you believe are some of the unsung heroes, if you will, either locally or statewide or nationally?
Oh, there's so many.
Okay, well, just give me two.
For someone like me, who's born and raised in the Deep South, I was born in West Memphis, Arkansas, and raised in Little Rock. People that I look to are my grandparents, great-grandparents, particularly some that are really overlooked. I can go back to my maternal great-grandfather, my grandmother's father, who was that first generation out after the emancipation of enslaved African Americans, who really took the baton and took this concept of freedom and set a foundation for every generation that followed. And when I look at, not just in my own family, but any number of people, when you look at that first generation, for here in Tallahassee, we look at people like Mr. John Gilmore Riley. Those were persons who took a concept and brought forth a reality, whether it be education, whether it be preservation of properties, securing of their first properties, even the establishment of educational institutions for African Americans. They established a reality that they had no framework for.
And they overcame some great obstacles.
They overcame some of the greatest obstacles. And I think that the thing that we often don't realize when we talk about our own personal histories is that sometimes, because of the way history is taught in the public sector, we're given the Egyptians, and we learn maybe a tidbit about. We don't even associate that as true Africans, but we talk about Egypt and the expanse of these glorious empires, but then
pyramids and so on and so forth.
And then we skip, and you can look in history books today, and you'll see the next page will talk about enslavement, and we try not to even use the word slave because it takes away the personhood, that this was an actual person who was enslaved, but that person's enslavement ended, and what happened after it ended, that they actually fought and were part of securing their own freedom, and what they did upon being emancipated or becoming free citizens.
So I'm gonna switch our conversation just a little bit. It's good. So tell me about what your favorite foods are. We're here at Nefertari, so tell me what you like.
It ties in, actually. It really does. I say soul food, but the reason I say that with pride is that a lot of what we look at as soul food really were foodways that were preserved from many countries within the continent of Africa. And when you look at the way foods are prepared, soul foods that we say, with sweet potatoes, greens, whether we collard greens, mustard, turnip, or even kale. We look at the way we stew meats and the way we smoke meats, that you can take that foodway, you can go to South Carolina, you can go to Louisiana, you can go to Haiti, you can go to
a bunch of different
any
places.
number of places, and you will see the semblance or the connection that a lot of these things are treated, the way we treat the food is the same, because this was our way, our ancestors' way of preserving their own identities, their own cultural identities. So I connect with those foods because that's what we grew up on.
Absolutely.
My grandmother was good, and mama and aunties, everybody, we grew up eating mixed greens, so I didn't know about a collard green solely until I came to Florida. You knew
about a bunch of stuff.
Oh gosh, we ate turnips and mustards and
soul food,
food in every way.
Food.
Anything you could grow in your garden, essentially, or you could hunt during hunting season. Game, wild game. That's what I find the most comforting of food.
Okay, excellent. Well, that is all the time we have
wow.
today. I know that conversation goes by fast. So I want to thank you all for joining us for Conversations with Nicole today at Nefertari's. I encourage you all to like us on Facebook and on YouTube at Conversations with Nicole.